Everyone, David here with a new review for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because if IGN's not going to do a review on it, then I for sure am. So you can count on me. Unless work or anything else in life interferes, which even then I will try my best to give you guys a review, even if it's kind of like shitty, like with my camera phone or something. I will try. In fact, that might happen in the next couple of weeks, only because of work. It's the way schedules work out. So just be mindful of that. But for the time being, here's my review of the latest episode of S.H.I.E.L.D. that was kind of like that episode where it's hard to not call it a filler because it technically had some moving parts within it that are crucial to the overall arcing plot, and things got moving. It's just that the first half of the episode was more of our characters just kind of walking and talking, doing the whole classic walk and talk, and it was also taking our characters and kind of separating them into threes where you have one thing happening after another and then cutting back, but it's just all a matter of just dialogue, of characters interacting with one another, saying, okay, what's the game plan? And we had Agent May and Daisy going after Robin, which was her initial plan, but to me that was probably the weakest aspect of the episode. Not because it was bad, it's just that in comparison to the other two, it just didn't level up to par, and mainly because, again, it might just be my bias, but I just get ultimately disconnected when you involve a child character, and that child character is like that prophetic one that's just difficult to talk to, and our main characters need to talk to this person, but nothing can get anything out of them. There's just a disconnect with characters like that I just cannot grab onto, and it's difficult for me to find something for me to go like, yes, you must be able to talk, you must be able to say something, and I try my best to really resonate with her only because of how she's able to see forward and back, and stuff like that. So I was glad that that angle, that element of her just not talking and being just completely shut in, being like that, didn't last for long until Agent May showed up on the scene, and that, I was genuinely surprised how I was able to kind of turn it on its head and make it an emotional investment, because seeing her open up and grabbing Agent May and calling her mother, and then seeing once again a very stoic and hard as nails character like Agent May become vulnerable, that's what made this episode, or at least this aspect of the episode, redeeming, even if it ended up being the weaker of the three. Then we had Yo-Yo, who by the way looked especially hot in this episode. Maybe it's because of the new hairdo she had. Maybe it's the training bra from the beginning. I don't know. Or maybe it could be the badass cybernetic arms that she's got. Sure, they kind of cheated with the hands. They look like she's just wearing gloves. But it's cool that they added a little bit of a... They did that thing that I think more people in the TV or movie industry should do nowadays, especially with big blockbuster genre stuff, is that try to mix a combination of practical effects with CG effects, and it looks like they kind of did that with her arms. So that was pretty cool, that her hands were a little bit much more practical, but then it was here in the connective tissue area that they added a little bit of CG to kind of give them workarounds to look like they were actually connected to her body. So that was pretty cool. But what was cooler was that her entire arc in this episode, tailored with Gemma and Fitz being the invincible ones, because they see each other to a certain extent in the future, whether it be themselves literally like Yo-Yo did, or their incarnations, or their offspring, or their line, their lineage is in the future. Therefore, that guarantees that at least some part of them is going to survive in the case of Fitz and Simmons. So it was them taking that and putting it to the test, which resulted ultimately in almost like a, I don't know what to call it, but it's almost like a saw trap that was created, that was being tested by the creator of the trap, which was Simmons taking the drinks, and one of them could have been the acid that could have possibly killed her, and thus proving this theory. And then to kind of add little layers of comedic undertone, it was cool. It was cool that it was kind of like a Pulp Fiction moment for Yo-Yo to have that gun off and be like, ah, oh my god, it was like shooting Marv in the face. So it was a little touch that I actually really respected. But to me, in my opinion, the best angle of this little side plot was that Yo-Yo, along with the other characters, were finally able to kind of put Mac in his place, because I love Mac. Mac is a great character and a very integral part to the show. But I love that they're understanding that Mac's protection is now becoming a flaw, is now becoming a detriment, to the point where he has certain lines that can kind of teeter. I mean, you can make an argument for them, but just as well, you can make an argument against how Mac is slightly coming off as a little bit, I don't even want to say protective, but objective, like what's the word? I'm blanking on the term right now. God, what is the word? Possessive. He's becoming possessive of Yo-Yo to the point where he's like, he's not going anywhere, and neither are you. It's kind of like, oh, Mac, you're kind of scaring me now. I don't think you should be, you know. I mean, obviously he didn't. I'm paraphrasing the tone that he delivered it, but it's very easy for this character to become overly possessive, and I feel like they kind of teetered on that in this episode. So I like it that Yo-Yo is kind of stopping that before it really gets bad, because I'm scared that I'm not gonna like Mac in the future, because this is a character that I've grown to love for the longest time, especially during his time in the framework. I really do not want to see that getting tarnished with a personality of him becoming very obsessive compulsive and being very protective to a fault. Then we had Coulson and Talbot finally escaping out of the compound, out of the clutches of S.H.I.E.L.D, with the help of Creel. And it's cool because Creel did look like the type of character who was kind of torn between alliances. In fact, if it was all up to him, he would just live a normal life. It's just a shame that he ended up getting caught by the end. But Coulson and Talbot finally escaping the compound and kind of matching the image there with what Robin had originally drawn. That's a very cool concept. It's a very cool thing and a little MacGuffin that should not be overlooked, especially because of how many theories we can kind of come up with how what Coulson and Talbot doing there out in the middle of nowhere can possibly play in to what could happen in the future. Maybe they could meet like an Inhuman that's kind of, you know, hiding out there in the Himalayas. And I like that we even had a little momentary scare to kind of remind us of what was at stake with Coulson being, I guess you could say, technically killed in that moment where he needed to be revived. But it's funny because we know it's not going to happen. It's a little, you know, it's an odd episode to put this kind of thing happening. But seeing Coulson go down that monotone where it's just like that, especially knowing that cyborg or that robot punched him in the very area where we know he has that injury, our hearts as the S.H.I.E.L.D. watch kind of skip a little bit, because it's like, yeah. And combining that with Robin proclaiming that yeah, he will in fact die. Of course, specifics are kind of withheld, so we can interpret that how we can. But those two things going together, it kind of reminds us that, oh yeah, Coulson could die definitively without being brought back by the end of the season, and that could maybe bring the show to a close. Who knows? The only aspect of this entire, not only subplot with Creel rescuing Coulson and breaking them out along with Talbot, and it's honestly not only the only thing that I didn't like about that subplot, but it's also the main thing that I took away from the entire episode and looking at it and go, why the hell did they do that? Was General S.H.I.E.L.D. What the fuck was up with that wardrobe change? Changing General S.H.I.E.L.D.'s wardrobe from this, you know, this default general look is just something that I was already getting used to her being in, that I was actually not exactly welcoming such a drastic change in just the span of one episode. At least not after maybe some big event that could have affected her personality in some way. So to go from last week's episode where she was having that general outfit and she had that very conflicting personality going where she didn't want to be Hydra, but at the same time she didn't want to be S.H.I.E.L.D. She was hoping to work out a compromise to where she can kind of like, I don't know, she was going for a goal that was just different than Hydra, different than that typical thing that we've always been within the Marvel properties, and I dug that. Now she's dressed up like a Hydra villain, alright? For somebody who's saying that she doesn't want to be necessarily Hydra, she just wants to overcome those alien people that could possibly adopt her and to kind of be the one in charge, she looks like a Hydra villain with the boots and the spandex and the shoulder pads. It was a little laughable to me, to be honest. And also the way that she was performing was completely different than she was in the last week. That I just did not like her angle at all. I just did not like how they portrayed Hale on this week's episode. That it just looked like somebody out of a bad CW show, alright? I understand that CW shows are getting better as they've been progressing the past couple of years, but this is bringing me back to those early years where it was just that very on-the-nose villainy that you would find in a CW show. And I'm not going to say it was overall terrible, because it still had that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. coat of paint on it, but it still brought me back to those CW shows. It was a slightly rudimentary point A to point B type of episode, but it was more than just the filler one we got a couple of weeks back where I did feel like they hit the pause button. I didn't feel like they hit the pause button, I just think that this was more like you're listening to the CD and you got that one song that's not bad, but you're waiting to get to that hit song that you remember hearing on the radio. And I feel like that's coming, but you need to get to this one to get to the next one because you want to appreciate the show. And then there's things that are very crucial here It's like that song that has a really good message, it just doesn't have those beats and that thing that you're looking for in those other hit songs, and that's kind of what this episode feel like. But there's still things to not overlook, whether it be Coulson and Talbot being in a new location, our heroes finding out little clues, and as well as things going back at the base with Mac, and of course the really neat season 1 callbacks, whether it be the Gravitonium housing the dude that will possibly eventually become Graviton by the end of the season, with Creel's little visions happening throughout the episode, or that little stinger at the end with Reina returning, played by Ruth Negga, it's cool to see her coming back after doing Preacher for so long and getting an Academy Award nomination. It's cool to see that she's still welcoming to coming back to the show for at least the cameo, and showing that she's the one who entrapped Ian Quinn inside of that, and maybe that's gonna play a part in the plot later on when Graviton shows up on the scene, but only time will tell. For the time being, I'm going to be giving Inside Voices a very low 8 out of 10. Still a very good episode that got things moving, but it's that song. So for the time being, let me know in the comments below what you guys think of this week's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Did you not like it? Did you like it? What were the parts that you liked about it the most? Or what are your theories going into the last 6 episodes of the season leading up to the finale at towards the endish of May? And how exactly could that potentially tie into Infinity War? Post your comments and your feedback in the section below. Make sure you hit the like and share button to show your support, and of course subscribe for more of those sweet nasty S.H.I.E.L.D. reviews. I know that's a thing from Kind of Funny. I've always liked the term sweet nasty. I'll give them credit for that one. So keep being nasty, keep being sweet, and I'll see you guys all on the next one. This debuted back in 2003 when it was becoming really hot with the whole intellectual property of not just Spider-Man, but pretty much anything that's Marvel related for a very key demographic centered around young teens. And what better network to put this thing on than on the network that is very much aimed at young teens, MTV.
Best dressed? Please, the girls got hips like snack trays.